So, hi everybody. Welcome to the Defcon Group's VR event, Halloween edition. Yeah, complete with voice effects. So, welcome everybody. We've got two speakers lined up for you today, so it should be really exciting. Our first speaker is Gyle. She's going to be talking about there's nothing scary about mental health threat modeling. Uh, for many of you have probably heard that mental health and burnout in the information security space is quite rampant. So this is a very well-received idea. Gal's been volunteering with different online communities for the past 3 years by mentoring, moderating Discord servers, and presenting in different community-based infosec conferences. She's been in the tech industry since the early part of this century, is a master's in computer security or cybersecurity, digital forensic. I rented these lips and instructions. I can't read them. So, um, digital forensics from UNSW Canberra. Her day job includes doing proactive and reactive work as an incident responder. So, everybody, welcome Gyle to the stage.
Thank you. Okay, so can everybody hear me? Do I need to pick up the mic?
Yeah, you'll need to pick up the microphone. There's one on top of
Okay.
by Yorick's head there on the podium.
Okay,
Just
there we
click on it
go.
with your left
So
mouse. There you go. Yep.
how
Yep,
about
we can
now?
hear
Can
you.
you hear me?
Perfect.
Yep. Perfect.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so once again, thank you very much for inviting me. Okay, so let me just go through that. So I will be covering this for this session of our Defcon VR Halloween edition. So I'd like to first start by doing an acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge the Bunwurrung, Bunurong, and the Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nation as traditional owners and custodians, and pay respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. I acknowledge and uphold traditional owners' continuing relationship to the land and waterways, and I extend my respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be listening or watching this particular stream. Okay, so basically, I have a long and interesting path to cybersecurity. I completed a degree in psychology before I went to law school for about 2 years and got out. So I call myself an outlaw. And then I got connected to the internet, and the rest is history. So I'm an accredited mental health first aider standard here in Australia, and I'm part of the DC group 11613 in NARM. The traditional name for Melbourne. But what I'm really proud of is like when I talk about all this, like, you know, my background, skills, and knowledge and all those things, my real skill and knowledge is this one. So if I have tacos, I will find them and I will eat them. Okay, I just make this joke because of the start of this talk, because this is a quite heavy kind of talk. So at any point, I just want to clarify if there are some difficult things that I'm covering and it causes you distress, please don't hesitate to, you know, switch off or not, you know, not continue watching or listening to my presentation, because your mental well-being is more important. Okay. So let me start with the first part here. So I'm going to be covering a little bit about threat modeling. So it's just an overview. So I'm not assuming that everybody has background in doing threat modeling. So when I talk about threat modeling, it's something that I always clarify. It is a process where you figure out what are the potential threats in a situation, and then you prioritize the mitigations. Okay. And then the idea here is that you want to come up with an abstraction of the system. It could be an application, okay, that you're working on. And then you need to also figure out what are the profiles of potential attackers. And then you have a catalog of the potential threats, okay? So that is our that's a concept of threat modeling. Now, for women and non-binary folks or people who are part of underrepresented minority, I find that we're quite good in doing threat modeling in terms of our, physical safety. Like before we go to a certain, area or situation, we start, thinking about what could be some threats there, and then how do we mitigate that. Okay. Now, let me just close my Discord here so that I don't have those background sounds, that sort of kind of make me. Okay, let me just. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so now one of the classic in terms of the threat models is called STRIDE. So this was adopted by Microsoft way back in 2002, and this is considered the most mature threat modeling method. There is a book that covers this. It's that colorful book by Shostak. Okay, and the idea here is that use STRIDE when you're trying to evaluate system, design. You're going to be looking at several potential security properties that can be violated by threats. So you can see there below, I have like, a table there. So STRIDE is actually an acronym for the threats, for S for spoofing identity, T for tampering with data, R for repudiation, I for information disclosure, D for denial of service, and E for elevation of privilege. And these particular threats violate certain security principles. Okay, so you're going to be looking at what are the potential threats to the system that you are designing. Okay, there's a good blog from the SEI. So there's a link there. I'll also provide, at the last part of my presentation, there's a slide where you can take photos of it. By the way, as I go through the slides, please do not hesitate to take photos of my slide. Use it for your own benefit or share it with other people. The most important thing here is about the message, okay? The message that I'm sharing with everyone. And I hope that it helps everyone who's listening to this. Okay? And then the other threat model that I'm going to be providing an overview is called PASTA. So it stands for Process for Attack Simulation and Threat Analysis. The reason why I like this is not because the word pasta, because I like cooking pasta. It's because among the different threat models, this is the one that I saw that actually bring business and technical requirements together. So it looks at risk in terms of, like, this is a risk-centric threat modeling framework, and it was developed 10 years after STRIDE came out. So this was developed in 2012. And there are 7 steps in PASTA. The first is you have to define your objective. So when we're talking about objectives here, we're not just looking at security or compliance requirements, but we're also looking at the business objectives. And we also do a business impact analysis. And then the second step is we're going to define our technical scope. We are going to capture what is the boundaries of our technical environment. So we will look at the different dependencies in the infrastructure, application, software, all these dependencies. And the third is that we're going to be doing an application decomposition. We are going to identify what our use case, and then we will define what are the different application entry points and trust levels. Then we're going to be looking at, actors, assets, services, roles, data sources. And if you like, DFDs, this is where it comes in the data flow diagramming, and we're also looking at trust boundaries. And then in the fourth step or phase of this PASTA threat model, we now do threat analysis. So we are going to look at attack scenarios. It's going to be what's the most probable attack scenario that will cover our, system. And then we are going to be looking at any threat intelligence correlation. We're going to be looking some regression analysis on certain security events. And then the fifth step is doing a vulnerability and weakness analysis. So we're going to be looking at any existing vulnerability report and any issues. It assumes that we actually are tracking this and we have data about this. And then we're going to be looking at any potential design flow by using use and abuse cases. We're also going to be looking at scorings, okay, any CVSS, CVEs. And then after that, the sixth phase is the attack modeling. So we're going to be looking at the attack surface analysis. So now everybody's talking about attack surface management, all those things. So you could see that in PASTA, that is part of your threat modeling process. You're looking at your attack surface, and then you're going to look at attack trees. Okay, so that's part of your attack modeling. And then lastly, the last phase here is when you will qualify and quantify the business impact. You're now doing the risk and impact analysis. And then you're going to look at identifying what are the countermeasures that you have there. And then even if you have countermeasures there is a possibility that there is still some residual risk, okay, that's there. And then you have to figure out like, hey, what are we going to do with this residual risk? We accept it, it's up to the organization. And then you have to identify what are your risk mitigation strategies. So this is the PASTA threat model. So among here in the audience in Outspace VR, so who among you have used Stride before or heard? Just give me your reactions. Anything? Anybody? Okay, awesome. Okay. Okay, now, how about pasta? Has anybody used pasta before? Okay. Okay, awesome. There's one. So for those who haven't like used this, maybe you may wanna try considering like, using pasta in your next, threat modeling activity. Okay. Now, so with that, okay, let's now go to, the part about wherein I discuss, talk about mental health. And I have this caveat, it's there's gonna be some mention of suicide. Okay. Trigger warnings. Okay. If this causes you distress, please switch off, stop listening to this presentation. Okay, your well-being is more important. And then just to clarify, this is a set of general tips and this is not a substitute for therapy or seeking psychological or psychiatric advice. Okay, now everybody seems to be talking about mental health. Okay, so let's look at the definition. What is mental health? So this is taken from the World Health Organization. This is their definition of what mental health is. Mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities. They can cope with the normal stresses of life. They can work productively and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So this is the definition of World Health Organization when it comes to mental health. It's a state of well-being. Okay. Now, some people often think of like, mental health as, oh, everything's going to be great and all those things. So I don't know whether people could actually, talk while I'm talking right now. But, if you look, I'm going to ask you, if you see this photo, what comes into your mind? I don't know whether you could like say something or type something here in Outspace. Okay. Maybe not. Yes, I'm used to like some virtual, we're in there like some typing and all those things. So maybe first thing that comes to your mind is always like, extreme happiness and all those things. Some people would always associate, mental well-being. I'm always on the top of the world and all those things. Okay. So that's a perfectly valid way of looking at mental health. Okay. Now, what about this? If you see this, okay, I joke that when I have a lot of Jira tickets, this is like me. He's like so frustrated or like super annoyed and all those things. Okay, so why did I choose these two photos? Because it basically shows us like mental health is actually a spectrum. Okay, it's not always ups. There's also the lows and all those things. Okay. Now, speaking of lows, like the low side, okay, this is from the World Mental Health Report. So WHO released recently because October 10 is the international or the World Mental Health Day. So they came up with this report and they said that in 2019, there are 1 billion people living with mental disorder, and 15% of working age adults worldwide experience a mental disorder. So the prevalence is actually quite high. And of course, no surprise, COVID-19 triggered a 25% increase in general anxiety and depression worldwide. So everybody who's been like undergoing, like let's just say your anxiety levels have increased, or your depressive episodes have increased or become longer, that's perfectly normal. Perfectly normal because of, yeah, we're living in unprecedented. I keep on like hearing it, unprecedented time. Yes, yeah. So when I was doing my undergrad degree, studying psychology, I had one class called abnormal psychology. The first day of the class, our professor said, okay, as we go along and study, the different, disorders, please refrain from diagnosing yourself, because at the end of this, you will realize that you have certain, um, inclinations that may fall under a disorder. So don't self-diagnose. So in psychology and psychiatry, there is a book called DSM. That's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorder. So there is a listing there, and that is used as a think of it like a criteria on how to do diagnosis. But generally now it's quite interesting because of what happened to us globally, COVID-19, the lockdowns, and the economic impacts. There is really an increase in the general anxiety and depression everywhere. Okay, so now I just use this map as like a color coding. So because the next slide, there's gonna be a table there. So the USA will have that reddish color, and then Australia statistics is in yellow. And it's also to give you an idea how far away I am from you. So you see that green arrow there, I'm there. That's Norm. And even though I'm far away from you, I'm normalizing the celebration of Halloween in this part of the world. Okay, because why am I normalizing it? Because of the lockdowns and all those things, I thought of like, oh, what is a way that I could like spread some joy? So I thought about, hey, I should say, do some Halloween decors outside the apartment building and give kids, chocolates or something. And to make it like COVID safe, I just made sure that I have a box out there with a note that this is for Halloween. Just take, some chocolates and then just leave some for others. So I started that last year, and this weekend I'm gonna be doing that again. Okay. Yeah. Now, so these are some grim statistics. So what is interesting is that when I look at the statistics for the US, there's a breakdown in like different like ages. But for Australia, our statistics just covers 15 to 44 years of age. So suicide is the leading cause of death for that age bracket from 15 to 44. I couldn't find any statistics specifically for 10 to 14 years. It's just to say that it's quite low. And okay, but for the US, okay, there is specific like numbers, like for 10 to 14 years of age, 25 to 34 years of age, suicide is the second leading cause of death. For 15 to 24 years of age, for Americans, suicide is the third leading cause of death, and for 35 to 40, suicide is the fourth leading cause of death. So below that slide, I have all these links there that if you're interested, you're looking at the statistics, you can find those information. Now, some more grim statistics. So no matter whether it's in Australia or USA, okay, the LGBTQ I plus community members experience a significant higher rates of suicide compared to the rest of the population. So it's the same, whether it's in the US or Australia. And then one thing I also found, this is a global, number for each life lost to suicide. The impacts are felt up to 135 people. So who are these people? These are the family members, the work colleagues, friends, and even the first responders at the time of death. So for you, when you look at that 135, it looks like a random number, like a number just like pulled out of something, but there's a study that was really done to compute this. And for you, it's just a number, but for me, it's something more personal because I am one of those 135 people affected. I've lost two former work colleagues to suicide and also a cousin. And there will always be a hole in my heart that is always there. And every time it's their death anniversary, I think about them. And this is why in my personal advocacy, I talk about like mental health, because I've been like affected by this. Now, so from a global, perspective, I'm gonna be talking about mental health first aid Australia's definition of mental health. So for WHO, they always talk about like mental health as the general well-being. It's always like the positives. But for MHFA Australia, so that's an organization here that delivers mental health first aid training. They consider mental health as a continuum. Okay. And it ranges from having good mental health to mental illness. And one thing to remember here is that a person will vary in their position along this continuum at different points in their life. So there may be like challenges in their environment or in their family lives or like, career and all those things that will affect their mental health. And so that's why for us here in Australia, the idea is that mental health is a continuum. Okay. Now, I have been tracking these numbers since 2019, and the numbers has stayed the same. Like 1 in every 5 Australians suffer from a mental illness in a given year, and in the USA, the latest number is 1 in 5 American experienced mental illness in 2020. And before that, it's also the same 1 in 5. And then it's quite interesting that in terms of the top 3 mental health problems for Australia and USA, we both have depression and anxiety. In USA, there's PTSD. PTSD is down in our list. Our third top 3 mental health problem, we have depression, anxiety, and substance use. In the US, it's anxiety disorders, major depressive episode. Okay, which is you have the depression, but that's a terminology that American mental health professionals use, major depressive disorder, and then there's PTSD. So once again, the sources are available down there in my slide. So if you want to take a photo of this, please do so. Okay. So I have covered from a global perspective and then on a specific country, perspective. And now I'm gonna go specifically to the industry challenges. Okay, so we all know in our particular industry, the reason that you're listening here, you're interested because you know all about this. We have like the stress, fatigue, frustration, and burnout. Now I'm just gonna be presenting certain, results from studies that have been, done this year. Okay. So recently, IBM released their security incident responder study. So it is a global survey that was conducted by Morning Consult on behalf of IBM. And in terms of their methodology, what they did was that they conducted online interviews, and then they have a sample of 1,107 cybersecurity incident responders. We have to clarify that it is cybersecurity incident responders because sometimes when you hear incident responder, it could also be other types of incidents. Okay, so one of the top reasons that was cited by the different respondents in terms of why they entered the area of incident response is that they have a sense of duty to protect others. So for me as an incident responder, this is true for myself. So I wanted to specialize in this area of cybersecurity because I have this strong sense of duty to help protect and defend others. And no surprise, the first 3 days of responding to an attack was seen as the most stressful because, everybody's sort of like, going crazy and all those things. That's true. Now, let's look at some of the numbers. Okay. So, 81% of the responders think that the rise of ransomware has worsened the stress and the psychological demands on them. Yes, that's definitely true. And then 68% of the responders said that it's very or somewhat common for them to respond to 2 or more incidents that overlap. So previously, I was in a consulting role wherein this is true, wherein there was a time wherein I actually had like 3 incidents from different retainer clients that I'm working on. So it's normal to have like more than 12 hours of work in a day, and you do the same thing there. And there was quite interesting, the system when I was submitting my timesheets. It actually frequently like popped this message: are you sure that you are submitting more than 40 hours a week? Because it was more than that. So, okay. Now, 67% of those respondents experience stress and anxiety in their daily lives as a result of responding to incidents. That's true, because there's always this thought that, did I miss something when I was analyzing certain artifacts? So there's always that thinking, did I miss out on something? Okay. And then 65% of those who were surveyed said that they sought mental health assistance as a result of responding to cybersecurity incidents. I believe that number is higher. Maybe others may not have the opportunity to go seek mental health assistance, or it could be they're coming from a culture or a country wherein talking about mental health or seeing a mental health professional is still embarrassing. And I hope that we're doing right now, you who are listening to this presentation, when you go out there, you're going to be talking about others about this, so that there'll be the stigma will be lessened. Okay. Now, from that global survey, I'm going to go, because I'm from Australia, so I'm going to talk about the results of a survey done by Securo about mental health in the Australian cybersecurity industry. And this report was released on the 10th of October. Okay, that was about, for my end, it's like it's 29th of October here for you in the US. Other parts of the world is the 28th, so that was about 19 days ago. So their methodology is about a survey. They did a survey of 101 cybersecurity professionals. So their survey was about how they've been coping for the past 2 years, and the focus is on our cybersecurity industry in Australia. Okay. So this the colorful graphics here, I took it directly from the report, the survey results. So 51%, or half of the respondents, attributed their mental health struggles at work due to poor culture or management styles. Okay, and then half also said that the high stress nature of a job in the cybersecurity has impacted their mental health. Okay, and for me, this is the sad number. 37% quit their jobs in cybersecurity in response to mental health issues, with 9% their career paths altogether. For me, personally, I am concerned about the pipeline. Okay, and also to make sure that the pipeline doesn't lead to the sewer. And that's why I volunteer with different community activities and initiatives, because I just want to make this industry better for everyone. But seeing this report, I'm not surprised, but at the same time, I'm saddened. Okay, now. So the other interesting number here, I don't have it in the slide, was that the highest rates of burnout were among team leads and individual contributors, with only 9% claiming that they had not experienced burnout due to their job, meaning 95% of the people surveyed said that they have experienced burnout due to their job. Okay. Now, we're talking about this stress and burnout. Let's try to further understand them. Okay. So, for me, I like to make sure that I clarify definition, so we know how to use the correct term to describe what we are experiencing. So, when we talk about stress, think of it, it's just a physical or emotional reaction to certain conditions. Okay. So, there will always be stress in our lives. Okay, but it depends on the type of stress. Okay, so the most common form Okay, let me just drink some water. Sorry. Okay, so the most common form of stress is called acute stress. This is in the type of situation wherein you have a fight or flight response. And then once the stressor is gone, acute stress goes away. Okay? So it could be that, okay, drawing from my personal experience, there was a SISO who called my personal number demanding to see certain logs. And just, okay, normally you don't have that because you're like talking to people who are in the IR team. And he started, getting angry and yelling and all those things and demanding to see the logs. And unfortunately, that logs were analyzed by another analyst, and all I had was the results and, like the analysis, and he wanted to see the raw data. Unfortunately, that raw data was like, being analyzed it was analyzed in a system by another analyst, and that analyst was already sleeping, and he demanded that I wake up that analyst. And for me, I'm not gonna do that because it was, it's crazy. Plus, I know like we've all been working more than 12 hours, long days and all those things, and the person, of course, need to rest and sleep. And I just, no, I'm sorry, but they're sleeping. And he got angry and angry, like, anyway. So after that, okay, so that fight or flight response, stopped. But I was trembling when he was talking to me, okay, or yelling at me. Okay. Now, another type of stress is called episodic stress. It occurs when acute stress happens frequently and you don't have enough recovery time. So it will result in lower tolerance and higher sensitivity to stress events. So imagine that situation I was in. If it's happening frequently every day, it's going to be called it's episodic stress. And I don't have enough recovery time. And that means that I will be more sensitive to stress events, and it will be really difficult to recover. And then we have what is called the chronic stress, wherein we have been enduring situation wherein we feel that there's no control over the outcome. And this is the time wherein this is the type of stress that contributes to serious effects on physical and mental health. And there is a study done by Dijkstra and Paul. They surveyed, cyber operators. Okay, there are some, of course. Think of it like, common sense. Episodic and chronic stress contributes to operational risk and burnout. Okay, no surprise there. Okay, now what about burnout? So let's clarify what is burnout. Okay, so remember earlier I talked about what what is the book that is used, or the source. Okay, or think of it as like what is used by psychologists and psychiatrists for doing diagnosis in terms of mental disorders. Okay, so it's called DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, okay, for mental disorder. Now, the term burnout is not defined in that book. Okay, it's not defined in the book. What I found is that burnout is actually defined by WHO. They have a document, it's called ICD-11. So this particular burnout definition, I got it from ICD-11 QD85. Okay, so the definition there is very clear that when we talk about burnout, it should only be applied in the occupational context, and it should not be used to describe experiences in other areas of your life. Okay, and it's a syndrome, and it results from the chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So earlier, a slide ago, I defined the different types of stress. So when you have chronic workplace stress and it has not been successfully managed, it will result here in burnout. And burnout has three dimensions. You're going to be feeling, your energy is depleted, or you're always exhausted. No matter if you try to like get some sleep or rest, next day you're still like, you're like so exhausted. And what happens is that you're going to have a mental distance from your job, or you feel very negative, or you're even very cynical about your job. And then what you feel internally, you feel that I'm not effective anymore, and I feel like I'm not accomplishing anything. Okay. So And it's not a surprise for people who, leave a certain job, okay, because of burnout, or sometimes even leave our industry. And that's, very concerning thing for me, because we're trying to get people to fight the good fight. And then if people here coming in here and then they get burnout, or even let's just say seniors leaving without, like, having, new people here, who's going to be doing the security for our different organizations, for our communities, right? So we need to make sure that we do certain things to help us, not just survive, but to thrive. And this is where I'm going to be talking about the mental health threat model. So we will redefine the safety plan. So for those of you who may not be aware, okay, there is what is called the suicide safety plan. So this is part of suicide intervention, activity. Learned this from a training I attended. It's called ASSIS. Okay. So the safety plan has 4 steps. Step one, know when to get help. Okay, step two, it's about your coping skills. Step three, you have a social support. Step four, seek help from professionals. So I'm going to be covering this in the next few slides. So think of this as your mental health threat model. So step one is when you do your identification, and then step 2 to 4 is when you have your mitigations. Okay. So why did I think about this? Because I wanted a way to help my fellow, security professionals find, like a tool, or think of it, it's a mental framework. It's a framework about taking care of themselves. And I thought of like, okay, this safety plan can be redefined as a mental health threat model. Okay. So the first step is, of course, identify. It will be helpful if you write this down. There is even some applications, phone, mobile apps that's about the safety plan. So you can actually have that on your phone, okay? Or you can write it in your journal. So the first step is you need to figure out, you have to do some introspection. What are the warning signs that I'm beginning to struggle with my problem? So I have to think about what are those thoughts, those feelings, or behaviors. So I write it down. Okay, and then second step is, what can I do by myself to take my mind off the problem? Is there any obstacle to using this coping skill? So it's just, write them down. So in the next slide, I'm just going to be talking about some simple techniques that I've figured out that has helped me a lot. Okay. So one of the things is just taking deep breaths. Okay? When we take deep breaths, we are activating our parasympathetic nervous system. This is the one that keeps us, grounded and calm. But don't do it like this. I don't know whether you can hear it. That's like hyperventilating. So it has to be controlled and slow. So count of three. You inhale, and then hold it for rather, like, let's just say count of three, and then you exhale slowly, count of three. Okay, so that will help you. Okay, and that time, that incident when I talked earlier about the size of like yelling and saying that uh he's gonna pull out his $1 million business from the company or something. Okay, in order to calm down, I took a lot of deep breaths. Okay. So another thing that helps me in grounding is, like, for example, if I think about the past, there's like certain, incidents or events before that, comes back, and then I just like feel, oh, that's like, I feel horrible, terrible. So I just have to remind myself that's in the past. There's nothing I could do right now. And then I have to ground myself like today. So I look at my watch, or I look at the calendar, what's the date, what's the time. Okay, that's in the past. So that's like, just thinking about I'm now here. The other is just blowing on my hand. So it's just to be mindful of like, I am here, I'm present, and then I feel the sensation of, let's just say, my warm breath on my cold hand. Okay, so that's a way for to ground myself. Another way that helps me is doing visualization. The first is called, I call it the tree, wherein I imagine myself being a tree, and then my feet are like the roots, and I'm grounded here, I'm stable here. I'm a tree. And then another kind of visualization thing that I do is, I call it the leaves floating, wherein I imagine a tall tree growing by a gentle brook, and then there's a leaf that falls down and it's floating away. So I imagine I have that, let's just say, an issue or a concern. I imagine my issue or concern, that's the leaf. Okay, it's falling down and then it's slowly, floating away. So to help me be grounded in terms of if there are these thoughts or ideas that's bothering me, to help me let go. So these are some of the simple techniques that I've used. Feel free to use them. I hope you also come up with your own techniques. And if you're in the Defcon VR Discord group, maybe we can talk about it, share what works for us. It's always useful to hear about other people's experiences because we learn from them and then we learn from each other and we're able to help each other. Okay. Now, other things here, you could actually rely on healthcare technology. So you can use certain mental health focus apps. So there are things here that I found. So there's like for mindfulness. So the ones with the asterisk or star, these are from Australia. Okay, so one is Smiling Mind, it's for free. Another one is Insight Timer for free. So Smiling Mind has their own website. They've actually come up recently with an insight about Australians, state of mental health. So they've been around for a long time. Okay, and then there's a paid app called Calm. I also use Calm. Okay, so I use that for my daily mindfulness sessions and or even times wherein I feel quite overwhelmed with all the things that I need to do for work, and I just take about 2-3 minutes like time off to just use that Calm application to keep myself grounded and focused. Another is Headspace. Okay, and then there's the TRP, the Resilience Project app. So that's from Australia. Okay, then there's another app from Australia called Headgear. This is more of like if you wanna work on your mental fitness. So this is called the Mental Fitness Challenge. So you can use that. Another thing that I have heard about is called Rooted. Okay, I haven't used Rooted, but this is quite useful. I've like seen from other communities wherein they talk about it and they said that it helps them. If they have an anxiety attack or a panic attack, to help them, you know, um, stop that from worsening. Okay, so it's called Rooted. And then there's another one called Reach Out Worry Time. It's an app. This is from Australia. Okay, so I hope for those who are watching here and all those things, please take photos of this. Share it with your friends, with your family members. If it like anything here that could help you or someone please share the information. So let's go to the third part of our mental health threat model. Okay, this time, okay, if by yourself you're not able to deal with your distress mode, okay, make sure that you reach out to your social support. You contact a trusted family members or friends. Have a list if your first choice is not available. So you need to make sure that you have social support there. Okay. And make sure that you tell these family members, friends that, hey, I need your help. You're in my list. So if ever I call you around this weird time of the night or something, please pick up because I really need your help. Okay. Now, what is the spectrum of interventions when we talk about, our mental health? Okay, so think of it, there are these different phases. You have the prevention, early intervention, and treatment. So as I said before, when for us in Australia, when we talk about mental health, it's a continuum. So you're could be like mentally well, and then you're at this point wherein you're becoming unwell, and then you're unwell, and then you get treatment and you're recovering. And then this is the area, as you can see, there's a yellow arrow here. This is the uh, area, or think of it, it's like the phase where mental health first aid can help. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that everybody here knows about first aid. You have Red Cross or different, organizations wherein you can get, first aid training. But did you know that there is now what is called the mental health first aid. So it started in Australia, but it's also there are now training available in the US. You can Google mental health first aid, then your state, and there's going to be a training provider that you could sign up for. Okay. And just to clarify, a mental health first aider is not a psychologist, is not a counselor, not a psychiatrist. So it's just someone who is there to help someone who's distressed, to help offer support, information, okay, and even if needed, accompany them to certain, um, sessions like a support person, okay, but mental health first aiders are not doing any diagnosis, okay, there's no diagnosis, okay, it's just for support, providing information, providing help in whatever they can, okay. So for those who are listening now, I hope you consider becoming your mental health first aider in your community or in your organization. Okay. Here in Australia, we have requirements that for a certain number of employees in an organization, there must be a first aider. So first aider. So there will always be someone who knows first aid. But there is no requirement yet to have someone become a mental first aider. Although certain organizations have started sending their employees for mental health first aid training. So I hope if you're a manager here, you are in a position to influence, certain things or policies in your organization. I hope you consider having some of your people go out and be trained as a mental health first aider and have the support for this mental health first aider to help their other team members or colleagues in the organization. Okay. So now we get to the last part wherein you seek help from professionals. Now, if the problem persists or there are, these dark suicidal thoughts, you need to reach out to the professional support system. So for us in Australia, if someone is thinking of killing themselves, that is an emergency. So we have the 000, okay? And I believe in the USA, you have a different number. It's not 911. You have another number that's really for people who are having mental health issues and they need help. I don't have it at the top of my head. Maybe someone could share that later. But please do make sure that you seek help from professionals, okay? So in the suicide safety plan, the step 4 is seek help from professionals, and then you make a pact with a professional like a counselor, a psychologist, or a psychiatrist. You make a pact that you will use all these things in step 1 to step 4 so that you will seek help and you will not hurt yourself, and you sign it. So that's part of the safety plan. Okay. Now, now I've gone to this part wherein if you're one of those 135 people who was impacted by the death of a loved one or a colleague, okay, it's also important to know that, there's what is called the stages of grief. So who among you here in the audience have heard about Kubler-Ross stages of grief? Anybody? Any reactions there? A few? Okay, for those handful who haven't heard about this, so Kubler-Ross is a psychologist who did a lot of research with people who are terminally ill. Then have this denial stage where is this happening or why did okay, this is not real or it's fake or something, and then there's the anger, and then you're trying to bargain, and then get into depression, then you have acceptance. Now that is the classic traditional way of thinking about this, but other researchers and even personally, I've realized that the stages of grief is not linear. It's actually cyclical. Okay? It could be like I get into denial, agony, anger, bargaining, depression, then I go back to bargaining or I become angry again. And then afterwards, there's that acceptance. And I feel that the acceptance part is captured by that quote from a TV show, One Division, wherein grief is basically love enduring. So I feel that that is, grief for me, is that acceptance. Yes, they're gone, and then there's nothing I can do to help them because they took their own lives. And up to now, it's very difficult for me to say suicide. It's always like I use, words took their own lives. Okay. So yeah, so this is the stages of grief. And the stages of grief doesn't only just apply to death. It could also apply to other parts of your lives. Like, for example, you've left an organization, you've resigned, or it could be that there were some, retrenchment, you get fired and all those things, or a certain relationship did not work out. So it also applies to that. Okay? Now, this is my main call to action, why I do this kind of talk. Okay, we can do this. So first of all, remember, okay, you matter. You are not alone. And then I hope that you use whatever I covered in this presentation, create your own mental health threat model and use that. Okay, and then remember to practice self-care. Either you're in the blue or red team, hack, forensicate, you eat, hydrate, sleep, repeat. Self-care is not, indulgent. Some people think self-care, it's like go to the spa and all those things. No, it could be just simple things like taking care of yourself. Okay? And then consider going for MHFA training. Here in Australia, we also have what is called the accidental counselor training. I've searched for a similar training in the US. I haven't seen that, but MHFA, mental health first aid training, is available in the US. And then the next level, you may want to consider going for the applied suicide intervention skills training called ASSIST. We have that here in Australia. It's also available in the US. Okay. And then another thing that I'm asking you to do, build a culture of openness and support for the well-being of everyone in the team. So it doesn't matter whether you're an individual contributor or you're a manager. It's like it has to be something that you start. If you are in a position of authority or influence, do this. Okay. And then don't be afraid to lean on your community. It could be during in-person events or even virtual events here, or even in some of the virtual, communities like a Discord or Slack. Lean on your community. There are some communities wherein they have a dedicated Slack or Discord channel that's about mental health. So use those things, okay? And then lastly, consider the power of collective action for the greater good. So here in Australia, we have a union called Professionals Australia. So normally people think about unions, it's a blue collar worker and all those things. But unions have worked a lot for the things that we enjoy right now, like for example, the weekend, the 40-hour week and all those things. And admittedly, the past few decades, that the labor union movement has kind of slowed down. But what I'm seeing out of the pandemic and the lockdowns and everything that we've experienced, there is now a growing movement in the US. So it's not just the baristas, even professionals. So consider, if you have like people working together, because if you have a group of people working together for our greater good, you're not alone and you are able to advocate not just for yourself, but for everyone. Okay, so yes, we can all do this. Okay, so even though the previous slides have shown some grim statistics, but we can do something about it. By the very fact that you're listening to this, I hope you're open to these ideas and you take it back with you. And having said that, these are the different this one's like the sources and resources available. So I have here the studies on the left and some of the theoretical part of threat modeling and the link for the definition for burnout. Okay, and then on the right, you have the different, training there. And then if you're in the US, there is the mental health hackers. So if you haven't heard about them, check us out. So I'm one of the virtual volunteers there. And then if you want to also read the World Mental Health Report from WHO, the link is there. So please, take photos of this. I'm just conscious of the time because after, like, yeah. Okay, so if you have any questions, okay, please don't hesitate to send me a DM. So I'm just gonna go to the last slide we're in. You have there Gyle DC. That's my Twitter handle. I just hope that Twitter doesn't become like a difficult environment. Anyway, my DMs are always open. You don't need to follow me or anything. Okay, just send me a DM. You have any questions, feel free to ask that. Okay, I am also in the Defcon VR, you know, Discord. I'm also in the Blue Team Village, in the Defcon Blue Team Village Discord, so Gyle DC. So thank you once more for listening to my presentation, being here. And thank you for the Defcon groups for giving me an opportunity to share something that's very close to my heart. And I hope that everybody benefits from this talk. Okay. So thank you. I'm just gonna just have that the last one there. So if you want to take photos of that, so let me just drop down the mic. Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Gyle, for that presentation. I know of several people that I know burned out and left information security. So this kind of stress and learning to deal with the stress is actually a rather serious issue. I also saw it in the military where certain people just didn't handle it well and they didn't help them that well. So I'm glad there's resources out there now and people are becoming aware of this.